Taylor Cavanaugh, welcome to the Development by David podcast, all the way from the States. How are you?
Dude, David, I'm doing great, man, and thank you everybody for listening in.
If I were to ask you who Taylor Cavanaugh is today, in the last month of 2023, how would you bring that to life, mate?
Ooh, that's a deep question, bro. You kick it off right. David, don't mess around. I would say I'm a man on a mission to make this world a better place, one man at a time from the inside out. I'm all about, and I'm on my own personal self development, right? So I'm always trying, every day, I'm just a guy that's trying to get better than he was yesterday. That's it.
The reason this podcast exists is to showcase episodes or stories of distance traveled from one place to the other, both physically and metaphorically. And knowing
Mm-hmm.
your story and where you're at now, that the fact that you're giving back. I know it's not always been so easy. I know you've trodden a treacherous path.
Yeah.
Can we take it back to the beginning before all this?
Before this, well, I was a SoCal kid growing up. Surf, family had some tumultuous times, but overall, I had a lot of love and grew up, pretty well. And I had a special operator seed planted in my body at like 7 years old. I saw some SEALs training in the Bay, and from that point on, I knew I wanted to be that commando. That whole growing up in the early '90s, late '80s, I saw Predator, all the jungle commando stuff. It really spoke to me. Not just playtime, and not in terms of romance. It was like a job. I was fascinated with that man behind that gun. Who was that guy? And and so I started going down that path, researching what I could, books, like VHS tapes, man, at the time, and that dream kind of got shelved a little bit as I started moving into the adolescence, as it does for a lot of guys who probably listening in. It's you have that goal kind of gets sidetracked with the girls and the drinking and the bad vices and things like that are in our those immediate pleasures in our face. And I continued down that road for many years into college and all that, and created a bunch of damage behind me. A lot of damage and red tape that I was too immature to really see the significance of at the time.
What type of
And
damage?
just arrests, injuries, car accidents, many arrests, probably 16, 17, arrests, and that was an administrative hurdle I was going to have to get past to get into the military, right? And that's coming out of college. That's what I was contending with. Was looking back at all this trash I had created.
Given that you're a very alpha male, and I'm probably right when I say that was probably planted when you were very young, do you think crime and misfortune and mischievous was almost like a symbol of status at that age as well? It was quite cool to be rough and tough.
Yeah, I do think it's part of it. It's that not following the rules, and it's kind of. I wasn't a bad kid, I wasn't out robbing people or doing stuff like that, but I was being a knucklehead for sure, and taking risks. And some of that's risk. Some of that risk taking though is just kind of being that young male testosterone. We've all done it, that you don't have the maturity to know how bad it could go, on certain things. And I was learning, I was finding my right and left parameters, and I was hitting both, as it was banging on both, banging on the sides as I was growing up.
Did you have any good role models around you at that age? How about your parental figures?
My dad was in and out. He was around. He wasn't gone. It wasn't like that. But it was a little bit of tumultuousness in my parents' marriage. But he'd be gone for a little bit. He had some drugs and alcohol problems. And so I didn't have that stable male to view as, okay, this is how you operate your life correctly. I didn't really have that. And sure, there's coaches and stuff that tried to kind of mentor me, but I was doing my own thing, man. I wasn't trying to really hear anybody else's even though I probably could have had mentors. I didn't really see it like that. So no, to answer that question, my mom is a rock though. She's very consistent. Was very consistent with her. She was a teacher at the time, and consistently progressed her career. So I got to see that. level of stability, and thank God I had that, because I don't know where I'd be without my mom.
That's amazing, mate. It's something I often see in the stories of veterans too. Like my dad, for example, he had a very similar upbringing to you, where his dad was relying on alcohol, and he got very different versions of his dad all of the time because the nature of his
Hmm.
dad being an addict.
Oh,
And
that's
my
well
dad,
said, dude. That's well said.
yeah, for sure. And my dad, as a veteran, found discipline, found values, found purpose, found routine, found consistency, and found brotherhood in the army when he
Hmm.
joins. So, how important do you think it is for a young man to have a strong male role model in the household?
Bro, I think it's paramount. I think it's close to mandatory to mitigate serious issues, right? If you really want to expedite the success process, mitigate issues, you have got to have a strong male role model. It's. I mean, just look at the statistics in the world. Single mothers and absent fathers. Look what it happens in terms of prison and all these things. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. That's real stats.
Yeah, I saw, and it's not to do with military or careers, but to do with university. I think like 11% of people from a lower socioeconomic background in the States who have both parents together go to university, which is pretty all right,
Yeah.
11%.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not great, but it's not the worst. But
Yeah.
apparently, if you went through the foster care or the adoption process or the orphanage kind of process, it's something like 0.5%. So it
Wow,
just
man,
shows
that's an
you,
impressive stat, dude.
yeah.
That's
And
crazy different.
imagine that in the employment market and in everywhere else. So it just shows you the effect of having a stable family structure, and that includes having a strong male role model. For me, the reason that I probably didn't get into crime, even though the crime was around me, was because I was scared of my dad. To be honest,
Yeah.
he was a tough alpha male that would have beat my
Yeah.
ass if I took
Yeah.
drugs or got into crime,
And
and that
that's what
kept
those
me on
dads
the
come in, fear.
yeah.
That disciplined
Whereas
hand, that strong hand that we need.
yeah, and whether that is physical or metaphorical, it exists. And I think a lot of young men kind of require or crave their dad's validation more than their mum's, because your mum's always going to love you. They're always
Yeah.
going to put their arm around you, but you get love from your dad from doing acts of service, from being a
Yeah.
good
And
man.
it's like earned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think you
Mom's
joined?
always gonna be there nurturing you, but she'll always love you no matter what, even through the bad and stuff. But dad's is gonna be a little more hardcore and selective. You're gonna get that accolades after you've done something. You're absolutely correct. It's after you've kind of shown you're worth it.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think you joined the military or found the military feeling like home? Because I know how much you loved and craved being a Navy SEAL. Do you think it
Yeah.
was because that gave you that sense of almost fatherly, if not brotherly, kind of validation and purpose?
Looking back, I don't know if it was so much the brotherhood or if it was so much the environment. As sure, it gave me a tribe, right? It gave me a tribe, that an elite tribe. But I like the title, man, right? I like that external, because I was still at that time reaching externally for my validation of myself, right? And so that's where I was at, and it took me all the way up until almost my late mid 30s to learn that that's going to fail you every time. Is reaching externally for that validation of self worth, but that's exactly what it supplied me. It's supplied my ego a little bit, being a Navy SEAL. That was okay. See, I'm good. Look what I did. This is me now, and now this is my identity, and it became my identity. And it was cool party with the bros and being in a platoon, and it definitely gave you a home. It gave you this place that you could call, that was bigger than yourself, that you were associated with. That was, I think humans in general like that tribe.
I've began to learn recently through like behavioral psychologists who've been on the podcast, and then just witnessing packs of people or packs of men in humanity. Humans love shared suffering. Like
Yeah.
there's stories of where suicide rates dropped in the Blitz during World War II when loads of families were congregating together in the London Underground system, hiding from the bombs. But because they were all
Mm.
going through it together, suicide rates dropped than
Interesting.
before. which is crazy.
Yeah.
And I really believe that, like, humans bond through connectivity. I heard a
Shared
quote the other day.
hardship.
Yeah,
Shared
shared
hardship.
for
Yeah,
sure.
The Spartans were big on that with the Agoge. Is that shared hardship creates a very tight bond, and that's what special op force selection and all those guys. I'm sure you've had maybe guys from SAS and all those like that. You're bonded with those guys because you all have that shared hardship.
For sure, mate. Can you tell me about the Navy SEAL application and recruitment and selection process? Or at
Yeah,
least from your point of view?
yeah. I'll give you a 10,000 foot overview of it. It's you can come in as a right off the street. You sign in and you have to train and do all these physical screening tests to prove and get a SEAL contract from as you're enlisting in the military. So then you go directly into this pipeline. You can also funnel in from you're already in the military, but you have to do these physical screening tests: swim, run, pull ups, push ups, sit ups, and it's competitive. You have to get some pretty damn good scores to kind of get a contract. And you go in, you go through a boot camp, just normal boot camp. Then you go into a what's called basic underwater demolition preparatory school, which is just preparation for the selection, which is
Is that
just
buds?
all. Yeah, this is before that. And
Okay.
so this is just all physical training. It's buds prep. That's what this is. So this is run, swim, lift 3 times a day, 2 hour sessions, so 6 hours a day for 2 to 4 months before you go. And you're in damn good shape by the time you go. And you're getting coached by civilian contractors who are all specialists in these fields. So we were doing, under drown proofing, swimming, extensive. Then they take the top 75% of the scores before you test out. All those guys fly to California, do buds, and then start buds. Our buds class started with, we flew out with 400. 3 weeks later, we classed up with 285 after the tests and all the bullshit. Then 3 weeks later, we had 185, and then after Hell Week, we had about 50. So from that initial pool, in about 6 weeks, and all those guys were pretty vetted before. They had already been training for 6-7 months, and they're all studs. But the cold so you go through buds and all that stuff, kicking the balls, hypothermia training, running, all this shit, dive phase, and then you graduate and you go into what's called SEAL qualification training, SQT. That's where it's less attrition and more failures. So this is where you're going into cold weather mountain warfare, close quarters combat, land warfare, skydiving cell, military free fall cell, and combat diving. That's pretty much the basic chunks, and that's 7 months. And then you graduate and you get drafted or sent to a SEAL team.
I love how you just kind of skim over that like it's just like a normal day at work. But you even mentioned that like
It was one
most
long day. It was an
yeah.
18-month day, bro. It takes 18 months to do it as fast as you can do it. I did it as fast as you can do it. I was one of the rare ones that out of like 10 or 12 guys that actually passed everything all the way through. No failures, no injuries from start to finish. Took 18 months direct. That's as fast as you can do it.
I can imagine the percentage of men that even consider joining the SEALs is very low. Of that, how many people make it to the front door to even sign up? And then
Yeah.
whoever make it to the end is like a fraction of men. Did it give
Yeah, it's
you like
very, very
a
small.
did it give you like an inflated sense of ego or validation knowing that you were like a 0.1% man?
It it's they during the SEAL pipeline, they constantly hammer the humility because you're fighting against all these guys with ego, right? Going into the SEAL pipeline is kind of egotistical. You're like, what's the hardest badass thing? That's me, bro. It's like, I'm going to do that. I don't want to be in the regular military. I did no desire to be. And that's also another piece. The only reason I really passed, I believe, is because I painted myself into a fucking corner. I had to go to jail to get in the military. So I served time because I had so much of a criminal background. To get into the military, I had to go to a lockdown facility in San Bay Area, San Francisco, for 4 months. I didn't see the sun. And so I was 23, just out of college, right into jail to get it. So by the time I got to SEAL training, which was like divine intervention because I had to get a secret clearance. I had to get a top. It was it was God. There was the only way I could describe. There's no reason I should have gotten through all that administrative stuff. Everyone told me it was impossible on the administrative side. So by the time I got there, I was like, man, I was so happy. I was not, and I was not going to go on a boat if I failed and scrape barnacles. That was not, and that's when I started before I got in the military, learning about the French Foreign Legion because I didn't know if I was going to even be able to get in the military. I got turned down by the Marine Corps for my tattoos. I had too many tattoos. Turned down by the Army because of my criminal background. Turned out, so the Navy was the last one. They said you can't even do any job except scrape turds off the toilet or be a Navy SEAL if you can pass all the shit. I had like no, because I had drug charges and all this shit. They were like, man, you're really limited, but you can only be a SEAL if you pass. So that's what I was there to do anyway. So it worked out well for me.
Taylor, that's wild. Given the fact that most Navy SEALs had so many other hurdles to jump through the assessment process, you had those and these hurdles of uncertainty whether you were going to get
Yeah,
in or not. What
yeah.
led you to having those conditions and serving that jail time? And why was the jail time a
Yeah.
condition for
Why was
joining?
it? Yeah. So I had so many misdemeanors. It was like nothing bad, but it was like ton of drunken publics, ton of like little fights in the street. Just being a knucklehead, partying, a DUI, having on a suspended, stuff like that, just stacked up. So when I went to go in the military, they said you're on probation. I was on probation, so I thought they can get written. No, they were like, no, we can't. So I had to go get a lawyer, talk to a judge. The judge looked at what I had done, which was not be good during all this time. And he said, okay, I'll commute it, which he had the power to just, you know, clean it up. And I didn't earn that, you know? Well, what does he know? I might say I'm going to the military. And then, so he said, okay, I'll give you 6 months in jail. I said, okay. The lawyer was like, well, that's kind of a lot. So he said, all right, 4. So I went and I accepted 4 to commute the probation to do it faster, or I would have had to wait 3 years to go in the military, which was not an option.
That's wild, mate. I hear stories about Hell Week during the assessment process through people like David Goggins or Jocko Willink.
Yeah.
Could you bring to life what Hell Week is?
Yeah, man. Hell, it sucks, man. It's you start Sunday night and they keep you up till Friday. So you get 1 or 2 days of like an hour and a half of sleep, but you just sleep soaking wet in the fucking sand. So it's not like that's just to keep you from dying, really, because you can't stay up for that long doing all that. And you're running and moving the entire time. So you're running about 400 kilometers during this time with a boat on your head all night, all day, hypothermia, all the time, freezing, and falling asleep, standing up with your food. And, it's so substantial that by the end of Hell Week, a lot of guys have to go to the hospital to get skin grafts on their legs because of so much chafing. It's like substantial. So, and the skeletal muscle breakdown so significant that everyone's head swells up, all your joints are swollen. So it's no joke. Everyone's hallucinating by Thursday, hardcore. So you're hallucinating and you're rowing and you're in the ocean and you're seeing shit. It's a trip, man.
Fucking hell. Do people drop out during Hell Week,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
presuming?
Oh yeah. Most of the time, but it's an interesting thing that a lot of people don't know about. It's 5 days, but almost everybody, it's like 99%, 99.9. Anybody who quits Hell Week quits Sunday night, Monday, or maybe even Tuesday morning. But if all the guys that make it to like Tuesday, and you still have 3 more days, whatever the psychological profile is of that guy, nobody quits, right? If it's like nobody quits after that time period, and the instructors know that it's like built in, so they'll keep you moving, but they know nobody's quitting. All the guys that have made it past that point are like, I'm just gonna die, and so they actually are a little bit more reasonable, or they're smart because they know that everybody there will just die before they'll quit. So it's like because it's like that tipping point, that Tuesday morning.
You bad motherfuckers. That's nuts, man.
Yeah.
When you were going through a Hell Week, did you have any seeds of doubt? Did you ever think you were gonna quit
You know
or give
what?
up?
What's interesting is it's Hell Week. I never even thought about quitting ever. So it was because I had painted myself in a corner, about it, and I never had any. The doubts I had were failing stuff, right? That was the doubts I had was could I do it? You have tested evolutions all the time, and my running is fucking dog shit. So I can't run. Running's for the enemy. That's what I always feel. So I was always scared about the times going into. I had to really, really put out to pass the run times, and the obstacle course as well wasn't a gimme for me. So it was very nervous before that stuff. That's where my seeds of doubt lied, not in my ability to endure. If anything, I know how to do that is just endure pain and suffering, but I was scared about failing or injuries. That was also another thing, very carefully not to get hurt, because I knew if I got hurt or something, I had like one real go to do this correct momentum wise.
So I understand that like the Navy SEAL selection process was basically your only hope because of all the misdemeanors and the criminal
Yeah.
charges. I know that was such a good tool to get you through that week. Do you think there's any other moments in your life prior to that that gave you this hardcore mental conditioning to bite down on the gum shield and get through it?
When I went in the Foreign Legion, for sure. Because I really had I had, once again, it's what story you tell yourself. In my head, I had no more options. I had no more options. I was coming suicidal from my truck with nothing, no money, no nothing. I burned the boats, man. I had cut up my credit cards and all that shit. I had no way back when I went in the French Foreign Legionnaire. I was like, it's this or nothing, man. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Pain is a hell of a motivator, isn't it? Much more than
Ooh, bro,
pleasure at times.
it's pleasure can't be the motivator. That's futile, right? It's real pain and even physical pain, but emotional pain. That emotional pain of that terrified of being average, terrified of not living up, terrified of what people might think of me if I quit, right, or didn't make it. Because that people act like, oh, what people think of them doesn't matter. Fuck yeah, it does. I care. I give a shit what people think about it. I don't want them to think I'm a pussy or not capable. That was always really important to me is respect. So I was terrified of that stuff, man.
And I'm sure you're the same. Even more so, I care about what I think of me, the story I tell myself about the man I am. So whether it's sleeping in, mate, I see you up at 3 a.m. doing press ups every morning.
Yeah.
Like I don't get up that early. I get up at 5:30. And the days I don't get up at half five, the
Oh,
story I tell myself about myself is horrendous.
dude, it's
Um,
bad, especially because you're across the bridge, and now and going back is so painful, man.
you're right. I know the time in the SEALs was both a really disciplined and high achieving time, but also times where you made some silly mistakes too. Can you tell me about that path that you walked as a Navy
Yeah,
SEAL?
yeah, man. I started strong, very focused, and was always very happy to be there. So, there, other than this moment in time now, which I was the happiest then, right? Was trying to chase that for a long time until I arrived at this scenario where I'm happy with myself and really, really content with what I'm doing. That was the time before that where I can't remember being as happy. And that was actually a little bit of the problem because I got there in this celebratory mood, right? I had arrived, and I'm not the guy that goes and parties and stuff when you're in a bad mood. I'm an isolator, right? I'd rather be alone and not deal with it. Well, I was like, fucking let's get it, bro. Like I was so happy. I was work hard and I would play hard as fuck. Work hard, play hard as fuck. And when I was playing hard as fuck, these small things would start to happen. And they started to kind of snowball. And was still going on deployments doing well. I'm a sniper. I'm a JTAC, communications specialist, advent laden specialist, which is like kind of low profile operation stuff. I had a lot of qualifications that were fast. I got them as a new guy, which was unheard of. I was early promotes. I was already up for, all this stuff. And I would say maybe a little ego was coming in there. I was getting really confident and comfortable. And so I was going out a little bit harder, still training hard and working out and all this stuff. There early, gone late. But the off the field stuff was starting to speed up. Was starting to speed up, do a little, party a little too hard on this, and then one time on a training trip, I hit a guy in a bar, right? And people are like, "Oh, one time, yeah, one time's all it takes, man." And
What
that
happened? Why did that happen?
he said something fucking off color while I was walking out, right? It was kind of building throughout the night, and then I was with this chick, and I thought he, spit on her or something. I one looked just right straight at him, and I broke his orbital eye socket. He almost lost his eye, and that I got a grave bodily injury, aggravated assault felony charge. So that's not good, bro, when you have a top secret clearance, right? So I was fighting it with lawyers, fighting it with all these things that we complicate our life with by not living right and putting ourselves in dangerous situations, right? No great virtue is going to be learned at a bar at fucking 2 a.m. Bottom line, you're not gonna become a better person doing that. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. You're not setting yourself up for success. So that's what happened at this moment, and it was years to fight that. I was getting sued for $250,000 by the guy. I was having to go to jail, fly back and forth. I ended up going to Iraq still on bail. I don't know how that fucking happened, but I'm in Iraq stressing because my plea deal was 6 years in prison plus 3 parole was my plea deal. Still fought it. Long story short, I get it bumped down to misdemeanor, but it's huge probation, very complicated. I couldn't drink or travel. And I'm an active duty Navy SEAL. It was very, very challenging. I would have totally fucked it up, and I did. 3 months later, I get altercation, not a fight, but just like fucking around on a golf cart at a concert like an idiot, and get an altercation with the police, tased, dogs, all this stuff. Now I got another aggravated assault charge now on a police officer. So I have a violation of my probation. And this is all while I'm active duty Navy SEAL at SEAL Team 7. About ready to go to Iraq again. So I'm on my 3rd deployment. I went to Yemen, Iraq, and now I'm about to go to Iraq again. After I had just cleaned everything up, I stacked it all, piled shit back on myself, and then that was the nail in the coffin. That was the nail in the coffin with Big Navy JAG, which is like the lawyers of NCIS and all the investigative units in the Navy. They were like, "Fuck this guy, thinks he's above the law," and so they hammered me, and I got kicked out.
Is that a rare occurrence for a Navy SEAL? Like you were never let go because you weren't a good operator, because you weren't fit or strong or capable.
Most
It was
guys,
because
if
of
they do
behavior.
get kicked out, it's because off the field shit, and it happens. And I wouldn't say a lot. Most, there's a lot of SEALs that are locked on, man. Not like I was being a knucklehead, but it happens. It definitely happens every year. Happens to some guys.
Have you ever found what the true root cause of that kind of habitual routine or habitual pattern has
That's
been?
habitual self-sabotage, which had been a story in my life. I know exactly what it was. It was lack of self-worth. It was
Mm.
lack of self-worth because I had always validated myself externally. I had never addressed me. I'd always been deliberate about what I wanted to do in my life, but never deliberate about who I wanted to be in my life. So I would be acting out sexually on the weekends. I'd be doing this and that. I'd be not super disciplined with my workouts and stuff. Then I realized once I addressed the discipline, I was like, hey, I got to start doing what I say I'm going to do and actually fucking do it. Right? I can't say I'm going to wake up and then not and this and that. I'm kind of disciplined. I eat good-ish. I'm disciplined-ish. I was like, that's not the guy I want to be. Once I decided I was going hard, look at me, I'm a dude, tatted up head. Well, everything I do has got to be all the way or no way. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing, and moderation's for cowards, and that includes discipline. So that's what I went into when I decided to go under this undertaking about being a better man and holding myself to a higher standard. It was, I'm going to be disciplined and I'm not going to break. Never. And so that's when I started getting up at 2. You see, I record all my stuff, David. I don't miss. I don't miss. And that's part of my deal. And once I started not missing ever, man, I started to feel good about myself. And what do you know? I started because I felt proud of myself that no, I'm not going to go do that because I want to feel better and I'm not going to mess up this high vibration I've created.
That's badass. That quote around moderation is for cowards, and anything worth doing is worth overdoing is one of the
Yeah,
coldest quotes I've ever heard. Let me give you one back that I think really illuminates your story and is really aligned to the character that you are. It's confidence doesn't come from screaming affirmations in the mirror. It's by having an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are.
straight up. I dig that. I get chills, bro. That's a good one, dude. I like that a lot. It's absolutely true. It's not hocus pocus, man. It's application and proof.
And I don't want to come on this podcast and share like almost like top trumps where like the most extreme story wins. Like everyday guys who are listening to this don't have to be a Navy SEAL to have that stack of proof. They can do small
No,
incremental habits where they can look back and say, well, I washed my bed sheets this morning and I put my bed on before I left for work. I brushed my teeth first thing. I went to the gym and worked out. I got my steps and I got sunlight. I counted my macros. I went to bed at a reasonable time. I read 10 pages of a book. That's fine. That's enough for most young
bro.
men.
None. All my self worth today doesn't come from being a Navy SEAL or a Legionnaire. None of it, because it never worked before. The only shit that makes me feel good and fulfilled today is always doing what I say I'm going to do and being there, not only for myself, but starts there, but for everybody else. Being reliable to yourself, being reliable to everybody else, and holding that line, being that man that people go, man, that guy's fucking solid. Morally, too. Morally, having that moral compass, knowing what goes on behind when the door closes fucking matters. When nobody's looking, that's what matters the most. And that's what people start chipping away. It's not just about how you're perceived, it's about how you know about yourself. Man, I know what goes down when the door is closed and nobody's looking, man. That energy you can't fake.
You can't. And I think where a lot of people are challenged today, especially young men, is that because of social media, they can showcase their merit or showcase their morality online by what they say or what they post. But no one's ever going to check what they do behind closed doors. Whereas like 20,
Yeah,
30 years ago, you couldn't say that you were disciplined, motivated, hardcore, alpha guy, and then not be those things because you'd be caught out. Whereas now, loads
yeah,
of people can pose online and get away with doing the absolute opposite.
yeah. And the posing, I would say a lot of people can actually tell, right? Because we see so many people. People know who's authentic and who's not, right? That's why my shit hits because people know I fucking live this shit, and why some other guys hit because they know that it's real. Man, I could see fluff a mile away. Somebody's like, "Yeah, you got to live this way." I'm like, "Man, what do you do, man? Look at be saying talking hard is different than living hard, right? It's a totally different. So it's a totally different energy. You could just see it on someone's fucking face.
I was saying this earlier to a mentor of mine when I was trying to think about my own tribe, the people that I have around me. And we all come from different backgrounds, wealth, different ethnicities, but there's like two really common threads. They all do voluntarily hard things all of the time. Uh, that's such a common thread, whether it's working out, whether it's martial arts, whether it's having military experience,
You've
or
got
just,
to. You
yeah, or
have to.
doing
It's the
intellectually
rules.
hard things as well.
It's the rules of the game, right? Like them or not, for whatever reason, it's the rules of the game, and so you can pretend the rules don't exist and experience all the anxiety and shit that comes along with that, or understand the rules and go, okay, well, I got to play by them, so I gotta undertake. No growth happens in comfort, and so anybody successful is gonna have to be constantly growing. So what does that mean? You have to be uncomfortable. That's how it works, whether it be putting yourself out there, like in a martial art, walking into that gym, that mixed martial arts gym, when you don't know shit. That's scary, but that's pushing into that, that unknown. And you're like, well, I'm going to put myself out there. You have to be willing to look stupid. You have to be willing to do all these things to get to those next levels.
And it doesn't have to be completely physical all of the time. It can be from a morality point of view, having an opinion that's against the mainstream opinion and voicing
100%.
that.
Yeah,
That's uncomfortable.
most of the time it's not physical, right? I use that as an example because it's an easy push button. But sometimes it's just the standard you hold yourself to. It's what moral codes, virtues you live by that you won't break. And it's because of the social around you. That's also difficult and uncomfortable sometimes. And I 100%. That's why I like this content too, is because David, it's the pendulum has shifted so dramatically, which a lot of people see is, man, we've lost morals, we've lost virtues. People are all about themselves. And we got to start getting back to becoming our best self and being community driven, right? And being transcending self. Everyone's like, oh, me, me, me. Man, it's not about you. It's about your community and the world. That sounds a little grandiose, but our countries, our communities, our families. It's about pushing out.
And I'm not religious at all. Never grew up in a religious household, but I can see why religion works. Even if you are someone who's agnostic or atheist and
Mhm.
thinks that religion is disillusional. If anything, it's healthy disillusional. Because if you look at the
Yeah.
statistics, people who are part of that community, whether it is Christianity or Islam or any, they have more wealth, they have better health outcomes, longer life expectancy, and better mental health and physical health and emotional health. And I can imagine it's because they have a shared set of values, they've got a community, and they have a place of worship. And I think
Yes.
that's maybe what a lot of communities are missing. Perhaps something that I'm missing in my life. Um,
We need a community. We need community. And what religion is explaining is explaining universal law. All religions are explaining the same universal laws. It's just if you were some guiding force, you couldn't give the same information to every culture. It wouldn't work. So it has to be disseminated differently. It has to be explained in different ways. And it's just explaining universal laws and principles. Universal laws and principles exist whether you like them or not. Law of attraction, law of vibration, all these things are real. So you have to understand them. And if you start understanding and living by universal law, that's the only way we start living in alignment and experience any type of inner peace. I can't remember the last day I had a bad day. Dead serious. And it's because I only started living by universal law. Once I did, everything cleared up. Karma's real. We all know it is. Why do you think about that? Why is that? It's because energies are real. We're all energies. We're burning energy. We exchange energy, and it needs to be understood.
I love it, mate. Let's take it back to your story. You were unfortunately kicked out of the Navy SEALs. What happened next?
So I went right into actually a pretty decent civilian job. I had prepped pretty well. I went to jail again. I had to go back to jail. So I went to jail twice as an active duty Navy SEAL, which is unheard of. And on vacation in jail, and then I got kicked out, but still active duty, and was in jail again. So I get out of jail, pretty much get discharged immediately, and go right into a private sector job doing private residential development, right, on big projects, $750 million project, on as a supervisor. So I was pretty happy, actually. Beautiful girlfriend living by the beach. I had the respect, pretty much a lateral step in terms of money. So I was like, okay, but I had stacked a lot of bad habits immediately. I was doing Adderall, Xanax, alcohol, smoking weed every fucking day, and no days off. I don't take days off on anything I do, bad or good. That's why I pick positive stuff nowadays. So you can't bend reality that long. Now, a year later, marijuana was legalized in California. So I launched a company with another former SEAL doing marijuana distribution. I ended up being the CEO of the company, was working for a venture capitalist. Now I'm pitching decks. Now I'm raising a lot of money. Now I'm the big cheese again, the ego going up, and I stack on a fentanyl and opioid habit on top of it. So I'm doing all that stuff. And now I'm doing opioids at night, all night, every night, sleeping 2, 3 hours. And I ended up crashing and burning, right? So then lose everything. I'm on suicidal homeless in my truck thinking, what the fuck? And this was the first time I actually had a moment to think, right? Because I had been running a million miles an hour for 2 years. And once I started in that reflective state, it was fucking scary, right? I was like, whoa, this is reality. I got no money. I'm fucking nobody. I got no title. I had nothing now. Now this is where I was like, who am I without that stuff? Then that's what I say. You start reaching for that external validation. When that stuff gets taken away, and it will happen, you're fucked. Because where do you look for that value, that self-worth? I had none. Because I had no built disciplines. I had no structure, no system, zero. I was still kind of going to the gym and stuff, but that's not a program. That's not a structure or any type of good system. And so then that's when I luckily had a moment of clarity and kind of got pulled out of myself and realized, I had a mom, a sister, people that I actually relied on me, and that I was just being selfish in my dialogue, my head being bitch mode. So then I decided to join the French Foreign Legion and change some shit up, man. And 8 days later, I was in France.
Tell me about is it fentanyl addiction? What is that? We don't really hear too much about that in
Man,
in
it's a
Scotland.
synthetic opioid.
Mm.
It's very, very powerful. It kills a lot of people. I mean,
Is it a prescription drug?
No. Well, it can be. It can be. It is. They use them as patches, and it can be, but it's mostly just coming up from Mexico or produced in China, and it's cheaper than other stuff. So that's what people are. I was snorting it, but people shoot it and do all different types of stuff with it.
What are the side effects of doing that?
A side effects of positive or negative?
Negative.
Oh, dude, it sucks your soul out from your body. I mean, you're addicted, man. Like coming off of that was so hard, bro. I didn't realize I was addicted because I was doing it every day, right? I
Yeah.
didn't do it during the day. So that's why I could lie to myself. I was like, I only did it at night after work, right? So I could kind of lie to myself. And when I stopped, it felt like I couldn't be in my own skin. I didn't sleep for like 5-6 days. And I felt like I was crawling out of my skin, dude. It was the only way I can describe it. It was so uncomfortable. And I don't wish that on my worst enemy. Sweats, just kind of like. And luckily the fog lifted at some point and kind of came out of it.
Did you have to do any rehab or do anything to
No,
wind off
I
it, or
just
did you just have to be cold?
cut it, man. I just ran out. That's the truth. I just ran out, bro. And I had moved, and so I was in this place that I couldn't get anymore, and that was it.
So it almost came to an end, and you reverted back to the military, to the French Legionnaire. What is the French Legionnaire? I've heard accounts of what it is, but I'm still quite confused of how a US citizen became a French
Yeah,
military
you
man.
know, it's it's a unique institution. It's almost 200 years old, started by an old king to get foreign fighters who had fought in a previous war for, for to get them out of the bars in the streets because they were causing problems. That's the truth. To get them back onto the battlefield fighting for France. And the political angle was if they died, it wasn't French citizens coming back in body bags. It was French. It was foreigners, and that's still the case, really. So, and the carrot is they got French citizenship at the end of their good time served, and that's what the French. And it's still like that today.
Was it more difficult or less difficult than getting into the Navy SEALs? How was the assessment?
Physically less difficult,
Yep.
physically less challenging, emotionally more challenging,
Why is that?
psychologically way more challenging. It's a very, very difficult institution. It's hardcore, thumb on. It's like prison with a gun. It is harsh, man. So it's got to, because you got to understand the culture that's permeated in it. It's a lot of guys from Eastern Bloc countries, right? So they bring that hardcore life experience to the Legion. So that's that. It's not, you don't have a lot of people laughing and joking around. It's stark, and you're marching in lines. You're checking out of the company. It's very strict. If you walk across the grass wrong, they'll put you in fucking jail, dude. That's serious. It is no fucking around. You're not going to eat by yourself. You're not going to, it's everywhere in lines, fucking like this. Your room is spotless 24 hours a day. It is, and it's harsh, man. All your time's regimented. completely. And then every once in a while you go to trainings and all this other stuff. I was at the Mountain Regiment, which is like kind of a part of the Mountain Infantry Brigade. So it specializes in mountain warfare. And that training's hard. You train in the French Alps in the summer and the winter, like full on sleeping in igloos and shit. And then you come back and you do gate security, all this stuff. Sometimes you do internal missions in France, doing anti-terrorism, domestic missions, and then sometimes you deploy. I went to South America. I also went to Estonia on the Russian border with NATO. So that's the flow. That's kind of the flow. You're working hard all the time, and you have very structured time off.
It sounds like, given where you were at your lowest point, that was probably something that served you quite well. Were you aware that it was going to be that strict when you chapped on the front door?
Yeah, I did, because I knew what it was all about. I knew I needed to do it for me because I knew I needed to mature, right? I was still in it. I was still sucking on a bottle of vodka before night before I went in. Well, I was letting the drugs get out of my system because I flew into France and I needed like 5 days to get the Adderall out, the amphetamines, the fucking weed, all this stuff, because I knew they were going to get drug tested. So I took like 5 days to really flush my system out. And I knew I still just didn't know how to live right. I knew I needed time to think. To think. That was what I needed. I knew it was going to be hard. And I was like, and maybe they'll give me a gun and let me deploy in between. So that was, and I'll learn French. And I wanted to finish all my tattoos. Dead serious. And I knew they wouldn't fuck with me on that because there's no tattoo rules. So, I mean, you got guys checking in the French Foreign Legion, head fully blasted, face and tats. So, so from dark hole in Russia, like hardcore cats, man. So I knew they wouldn't fuck with me, and I had a vision for my body, what I wanted to do, and who I wanted to be. And I knew I needed to write an interesting story, and I'm the only Navy SEAL to be a French Foreign Legionnaire. So I knew that I needed to get that done for my own sanity, to be like, see, okay, and that's that external validation again, though, right? It's going back to that external validation because I still hadn't learned yet. So I knew I needed that next title to feel good about myself. Something extreme that nobody had ever done before. And I did it. And thank God during that time, I also started instituting these other disciplines because I still found that I was like not feeling good. Even after I had achieved it, I was going, why am I not satisfied? So I had to start diving deeper. That's when I started looking into philosophical principles, Stoicism. I started looking at, meditations and Alan Watts and, all these guys who have good information and looking at old samurai codes and how you live. And I just started instituting these disciplines early, and strict with the food, strict with the diet, extra discipline that the Legion even went to it. Everybody wakes up at 5. I wake up at 3. I work out in the bathroom, right? People think I'm crazy, but I was, and I needed it. And that's what got me to this point where I just had this self-realization that I could start to transcend self because I was fucking so happy. I was so good, man. I felt so good about myself, and it had nothing to do with the Legion or SEALs or nothing.
Do you remember the first day where you felt like that, where you felt truly happy for the first time in your own body as yourself?
Ooh, man. I don't remember an exact moment, but I remember a time, and it was this year. It was earlier on this year. I was actually in the hospital. I was actually in the hospital because I tore my calf on a mountain training event. It was actually an older injury, but that's when I was like, okay, I got to go get this checked out. So I was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and I was like, it's time to really, and I had already been getting up early and stuff, but not like every day, right? It was like, I'd get up, I'd be like, I'm going to start doing this for real because I can't prove this model or help anybody until I am 100% good. So I started doing it, man. Started getting up, and I started doing 500 push-ups every morning at o'clock in the morning. And then I started just molding this system in this process where I just did it every day. And then it just became, I don't even need discipline to get up at, you see it, I get up at 2 a.m. I don't need, people ask me about discipline. I don't need discipline. Zero. It's zero effort for me to do that. I don't even wake up with an alarm clock. I get up completely naturally, stoked on the day, and start it because it's so habitual. I have no I can't remember a time where I was like had to make myself. Zero to eat right, zero to do that, zero to go, none. I use zero discipline. It's effortless. because I'm living completely aligned with universal principles and laws. And that's when I just started having this clarity that was massive.
And you have this identity that's been defined by you and not your external validation. So, as you say, getting up at 2 a.m., doing push ups and eating right and sleeping well, that's aligned to the identity that you have prescribed for yourself, not
Yeah.
what others' perception of you is. Therefore, it's so easy to follow and it's frictionless because the habits that you do are so aligned to the person that you say you are to yourself.
Yes. Perfect alignment. You're exactly right, David. Your habits are in aligned with the outcomes you want, right? With the vision you have. When you are perfectly, people run into this friction. That's a good word. It's frictionless. People run into these frictions and this anxiety and why they feel because their actions aren't aligned with where they're trying to go. It doesn't make sense, right? People, and I've been there. That's why we can speak to it. We all have been there. And I'm not perfect. It's not, some perfect thing in glass. That's, it's a constant battle. It's like sweeping the floor, I always say. You don't sweep the floor once and it's done. You sweep it every day, right? That's what we have to do with our clarity and our inner peace. Clarity and inner peace are the most coveted states in mankind. You think that shit comes free? Fuck no, it doesn't. You earn it. It's earned every day. You earn inner peace and clarity. It's not given to you.
So, Taylor, I'm guessing, and I think it's important to say for us to be like, it's not integral to live your routine or my routine. It's about finding your own identity and lacing a routine and lacing
Yes.
actions and habits that align to that. Because if someone
Yes.
walked into your shoes for a day, did 500 push-ups in the morning and went to the gym at 3 a.m., but they wanted to be an artist, it probably
Yeah.
wouldn't align, and they would feel that kind of mental friction because an artist is
Yeah.
a bit more kind of
There's a piece to
laissez-faire.
that. Yes, there's a piece to that. You're absolutely right, David. It's there's general principles though. I will say this. There's general overarching principles that are beneficial. That artist will still be better if he wakes up early. 1,000%. He'll still be better if he wakes up early and does hard shit, like we talked about, right? That I'm an artist, I'm going to sleep till noon and just be a sloth. Hmm, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be operating at your highest frequency available, right? So I always say in my program, because when I coach guys on my program, I always there's that saying, I don't tell them what to do, I show them where to look. That's why I don't say you have to get on because the good healer teaches people how to heal themselves, but you have to be given these tools, and it is early wake ups. But what time does that look like? Who knows? It is some type of morning process where we remove negativity. But what does that look like? I don't know exactly. Right? It's tailored. That part's tailored. But the big chunks, everybody would be good with. Everybody.
Mm,
You wake up early, you take some quiet time to get centered and do some movement and some high vibrational acts and some visualization. That's good for everybody.
I agree. My morning routine is it's at its best when I'm working out first thing, getting sunlight as soon as the sun's up, hydrating well, having my
Yes.
supplements, and journaling, getting what's inside in my
Yes.
subconscious from my sleep onto paper, and kind of planning my day so then I can move through it seamlessly without having to make decisions erratically. I think they're the kind of core principles that I live by.
What you just described is the perfect morning. That's when you start practicing that perfect day. I don't care what you're doing. You're going to be better if you do that shit that you just described, right? It's just facts. And you could argue, you could fight them, but it's facts, man. Everybody, 100% of the guys that I coach, when they start doing that, they're better. So batting 1,000, I don't, and they have professions that vary, right? The soccer mom that stays at home, she's gonna be better if she does that because it's this discipline, this this self worth that comes from doing those things.
Yeah, Ryan Holiday says discipline equals freedom, and I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely.
If I were to ask you, a Navy SEAL and French Legionnaire, what you would give a man to make him strong and built for the future, what are some core components that you would give him?
Start with your physical body, master it. Start learning how to be strong and confident physically. Then you move into the mental side, because the physical body is the easiest thing we can control. If your body is not in physical shape, good physical shape, you can't be in good mental shape. Impossible. You can't. They do not go together. You and I'm also saying somebody in good physical shape isn't necessarily in good mental shape, right? Because there's two pieces of this. But you can't get in good mental shape if your body's trashed, because you're trashing your vehicle. Then you move into that understanding yourself. You need to start doing you need to start understanding who you are, what you're about, what you want, clearly defining what success looks like to you so you actually know what direction to go, and identifying and clearly writing down, in a lot of cases, morally who you are as a person. And those pieces make a whole good healthy person.
And if I were to ask you, if you had the ability to mandate military service for young men, I think they call it here national service. It might be the same in the States. Would you prescribe
100%.
that?
Oh yeah, everybody. I think men and women, you do some type of, not necessarily military, but social service for the country. You do some type of, whether if you're a hippie, you do Greenpeace or whatever you do. It doesn't have to be military, but I think some type of service for your country for a year or two, even a year, I think is very beneficial.
I read about the increase of marriages in military service where countries mandate it because men and women get to see themselves and see each other perform excellence, so they get to see the best in the other person at all times. And apparently marriage rates in countries whereby there's forced military service or encouraged military service for both men and women, there's higher marriages that come out of
Interesting.
the forces. And it makes sense because you're forced to demonstrate excellence, and you're forced to
Yeah.
watch someone of the opposite or same sex
Hmm.
demonstrate excellence too.
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
As
I could
well.
see that. Hmm.
So what's next for you, mate? You've just stepped out of the French Legionnaire. You've done your service. How many years was
Hmm.
that? 5?
Yeah, just close to 5. I actually had to get out a little early because my YouTube and stuff was going on. I was getting friction with the French Foreign Legion, so it was kind of like, nah. They're like, hey, it's not me, it's you type thing. We've got to part ways a little early, so it was fine by me because I was on the next step anyway.
So what's next?
I'm going into this coaching thing full bore. So I do TCAP training, but it's mind, body, soul. We go into the physical body is one piece, right? The nutrition's another piece, but we do deliberate mindset training. That's a lot. I do elite level mindset coaching, as well as we're doing corporate training for corporations. And I'm partnered with somebody doing like an elevated corporation where we're doing not just mindset and team building, but also no shit like hair follicle samples, blood sample, doing actually health optimization to get ROIs on employees for companies. So that's kind of like what we're doing also. It's another project. So I'm doing the coaching, and that's TCAP training. You can connect with me at taylorcavanaugh.com, my YouTube, TCAP TV, or TCAP official on my Instagram. You can get me on anything. I'm Johnny on the spot with the DMs. I got sparks flying off my phone all the time. We're getting hit up all over the place. Writing a book. That book should be coming out next summer, called The Hard Way. And so that's almost done. Hopefully have some side projects going on with that. And just trying to get better, man. Trying to live this life and stay aligned and stay clear and stay positive and get this positive message out, man. I'm gonna keep putting these YouTubes out. TCAP TV once again. We got all the long forms. I upload Monday and Thursday. I don't miss. Every video's one take, no edits, full stream of consciousness. I never press the stop button, not once. And that's important because it shows alignment and it shows complete belief in what is going on here. And I think that authenticity shows.
Mate, that's what I love about this podcast, and it's why it exists, to use origin stories, authenticity as a self-development tool. And you've came here, and that's why I love veterans. When you guys never hide from anything. You walk the walk, you talk the talk, you do both of those things congruently. And I'm just so glad that we made this happen, mate. It's an insight into a really transformative story of discipline, self-discovery and personal responsibility and accountability. So glad that you could make it on from San Diego, mate. This has been honestly so much fun. Been really great to know you, and hopefully people
David,
check
you're
out your.
talented, bro. You got it going on, man. You're on to something here, dude. You got a really good flow, brother.